Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
With the Hollywood landscape ever evolving and, mergers and acquisitions and studios buying this and doing that and going together, it's hard to know which way is up. And sometimes you need to find your way through it. And if you're listening to us, well, we'll help you. Because if you're within the sound of my voice, then you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I am the host of this podcast, this audio-only experience, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. And if you are, please keep listening and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, Letterboxd, the TikTok, the Blue Sky, the Threads. I'm losing track. We're everywhere at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large, because, well, let's face it, if you love the moving image like we do, then, we're your one-stop shop, so please come on by and pay us a visit. We're in a complex time in Hollywood with all the mergers and acquisitions and everything that's going on and not knowing which way is up, and it's getting harder and harder to sell your movie and know what's going to make money and know how to make money and how it's all going to happen. And I mean, it's the waters, especially for Canadian producers, is getting a bit muddier. But there's a line through, and there's a new book out now. It's been out for about a month. We're a little behind schedule on this one. In real life, got in the way. It happens sometimes, but it's a new book called How to Score in Hollywood: Secrets to Success in the Movie Business, from writer Kevin Goetz and expert Bob Levin, who was a expert. He's been leading marketing teams at Disney, Sony, MGM. The man knows his stuff. He has had years and years and years of experience getting into the business. He's now the president and COO of Screen Engine, and it's an intersection of creativity, but also audience analytics and the stuff that goes on. And I mean, this guy really has a unique perspective on what's going on in the industry today, and we had a unique chance to sit down with him and pick his brain to talk about this book and just sort of the landscape of Hollywood in general. And it was a great talk. We went for about 30 minutes. Hope you enjoy it. But we're also going to put the sale link for the book in the description, so please go check that out. But first, enjoy our talk with Bob, because it's a darn good one. And sorry again on the delay on this one, folks. Like I said, in real life gets in the way sometimes, but Hollywood keeps on ticking, as we know all too well. But enjoy our talk with Bob. It's a good one. I guess just to kick it off, I mean, Bob, first off, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate this.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, congrats on the book. And obviously, it's a subject that's definitely, interesting to me. At least as someone who's sort of covered the industry for so long. And I guess the first question I got to ask is, what was sort of the first germ that made you want to sort of kick off and sort of write this book?
So, Kevin wrote a first book called Audienceology. And Audienceology was a book, and is a book, it's still a book, about the whole process of research, screenings of movies while they're in post-production, with a lot of inside stories and the value and all of that. And then we sat around, Kevin and I, talking about what could a second book be. And we thought that there was an interesting story to be told about what happens and how it happens that movies ever get made. Not the physical production, but how does someone actually decide that they want to get a movie made, and they're going to fund it. And what's all those behind the scene aspects between the life of a producer trying to get movies made, an executive at a studio deciding where they're going to put their money, and so that was the genesis of it. And early on, in the research company Screen Engine ASI, we had talked about a kind of testing we called capability testing, which was the idea of looking at ideas, something bigger than just a concept test, and seeing, is there an audience for this idea, and how big is that audience, and what does that mean? How much money you spend?
No, 100%. And I mean, again, I've always been fascinated by, I mean, like you kind of said before, the breakdown of it all, because I mean, again, as someone who again covers it, but I'm still on the outside looking in when it comes to sort of finance and marketing and all that kind of stuff. I've always been sort of amazed and be like, they greenlit that? They spent how much on that? And seeing those formulas, like seeing sort of the breakdown of that is kind of mind-boggling to me because I mean, it's always one of those things that when I hear about a marketing budget outlay and then, oh, it needs to make X to make its money back, like it always feels like there's a bit of voodoo economics going on. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, maybe the nuts and bolts of not just the raw costs, but I can imagine sort of the potential revenue streams depending on the project? Because, I mean, obviously, if you're having sort of some dramatic family drama, it's going to have a different revenue stream than, say, sort of an IP of a comic book or an action movie kind of thing.
Right, right. You know, I would say that it is. I don't look at it so much from the genre perspective. I look at it more from the audience perspective. So if there's a wider audience, let's say for a comic book movie, than there is for an adult drama, that tells you something about what money you can potentially look for in return. And there's breakthroughs. You can always argue from the unicorn, that well, but what about? But what about? But what about? But for all the whatabouts, there's more of a lane where most things live.
100%. And I mean, for me, and I mean, I didn't get to read the whole book, but I read a good chunk of it. This idea of, you know, a big audience, big idea, and the idea of, good isn't good enough. I mean, it really does break down, at least for me, the idea of, everyone's got a great idea, but it's like there's execution, there's implementation, there are so many other different layers. And that idea of, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I think or what you think. It matters what the paying customer thinks.
Absolutely. I mean, we don't in the book. I don't believe we ever talk in the nature of we're consultants who have this all this experience and all this expertise, and we alone can come into a room and tell you the magic that should happen and what you ought to spend. Everything we do is from the nature of talking to audiences and bringing the audience into a room to help inform decision making.
For sure. And I mean, how, like, when you say audience, is it just general public or is there more of that? Because, I mean, again, looking at this from the critic side of thing, obviously, like, if someone puts a little sort of well-intentioned, fantastic independent drama in front of me that has no marketing budget, that kind of thing, I can understand them wanting to have me interview them or write a review to sort of generate as much positive press as they can. On the flip side of that, nobody gives a shit if I write a good review or a bad review about a Marvel movie or not. People are going to go anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really interesting point of view that is pretty integral to that kind of decision making, which is are you talking are you talking to fans of an idea, people who just love a certain genre or just love a certain actor or whatever, and you're not getting a real sense of how wide that audience is unless you understand how wide the fandom is. So when you think about it, if you're going to do a horror movie, for
Yeah.
instance, and you want to talk about an idea for a horror movie, and what might be the right finances to put behind a horror movie idea, you probably do not want to talk to people who just reject horror. I hate horror. I never want to see horror. And yes, there may be a horror movie breakthrough, but again, that's the unicorn. So it's who you speak to and what parameters you put around who you speak to.
For sure. I mean, when it comes to the nuts and bolts of getting financing and getting stuff done, I can imagine, I mean, and I'm not looking for any kind of distinct formula because I can't imagine there is one. If you've got a really fantastic idea that could make a really dynamic picture, but you don't have anybody attached to it, it's going to be harder to get made versus than if you've got somebody attached to it. Like, how does that kind of formula play out in terms of getting yeses and getting nos at the end of the day?
Well, I think you're alluding to the fact of having an actor attached
Yes,
to
exactly. Or even maybe even like a name brand director even.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You could take a certain genre and say, this director. I mean, Christopher Nolan is,
Exactly.
is lives in a world by himself. Steven Spielberg lives in a world by himself. Marty Scorsese lives in a world by himself. So, yes, there are certain people who have a huge attraction and get more attention when they want to make a movie than other people. There's no doubt about it. Producers, where the audience may not even really know the names of the producers, are going to get in a room if they're well-known, successful producers versus somebody who's a great idea but nobody knows. I mean, that's just the business.
At the end of the day, I mean, people keep looking for like a handbook on this, but at the same time, it does feel like the longer you're in it, it's an easier business to read, even given sort of the seismic shifts that we've had, given COVID and more people shifting to streaming and just sort of the way the metrics of a movie are deemed successful these days. Because, I mean, even when I look at sort of the reports of, you'll see in the news, oh, it cost 100 million, but it only pulled in 30 on the opening weekend, and because of X, Y, and Z, it has to make X before it makes money. A lot of that almost feels like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, there's almost a bit of a marketing play in there as well, because it's one of those things where the math never feels like it's always up front, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, I mean, where is this information coming from? Who really knows how much it took to make a movie? Who really knows how much the studio is really putting in to market the movie? Is in the case of one story, it's to the advantage of the studio to push that out and say, look how brilliant we were. We only made this for 10 cents and it's going to make $100 million. What geniuses we are. Or on the other hand, is it competitors who just go, well, that's a flop because they made it for this, they made it for that without knowing. So there's a lot of those numbers that are pushed around in that story that I think you got to think of what's the source and what's the intention of that reporting.
How have the other revenue streams sort of impacted how a movie gets made? Because, I mean, again, even as little as 20 years ago, it was, or 30 years ago, it was like theatrical and then, okay, rental,
Oh
DVD,
yeah.
VHS, whatever. But now it's PVOD,
Yeah.
TVOD, streaming,
Yeah.
international, licensing for television, all this sort
Okay.
of things. Like, how do you balance all that?
Well, I think uh, some of what you went through more is the past than the present or the future. I mean, there used to be, a strong theatrical audience, people who, when they saw a movie in the theater that they wanted to go to, they would go. That COVID, and the shutdown of the theaters and the return and the rise of the streamers have sort of changed consumer decision making about what they want to go see and where they will see it and if it'll come out of the house. So the idea of let's just call it the old days where you had a good run theatrically, and even if you didn't, you broke even, you'd come out, you did a DVD release, you did a video release, you sold it to television. Most of that stuff doesn't exist anymore. So if a streamer makes a movie for their platform, there isn't a lot of ancillary income after that streamer produces, distributes that on their platform. If a studio which owns a streamer decides to make a movie and yet puts that movie into the theater first and then puts the movie on a streamer, there isn't much. So yeah, you still have international, and you still, but you don't have that blockbuster anymore. You don't have the early days of Netflix when they were mailing, video
Of course, yeah,
DVDs
yeah.
around. All that was a huge stream of revenue that just isn't there anymore. And the TV licensing, there aren't the TV, the linear TV business, the traditional network and cable network TV business is not a growing business at this point, and they're going back more and more to sports and reality programming versus buying movies, and even it's a challenge to get a scripted TV series anywhere. So it's a different economics, which only make you got to have a sharper pencil when you or a calculator when you start to put the numbers together.
That being said, has theatrical turned into almost a marketing tool or a loss leader in many ways? Because when I look at someone like Netflix putting something out for 2 weeks, or some smaller studio maybe getting 50 screens across the country, but leading very quickly into their VOD release, it almost feels like, in some aspects, the theatrical release has become not only a loss leader, but maybe just sort of a part of the advertising budget.
Well, you're now going into November and December. You're going to
Yeah,
see a lot of what, let me just put quotes around prestige. Let me put quotes around quality. Let me put quotes around adult movies coming out with it,
correct.
all having intentions for a run at Academy Awards. And that and in order to be eligible for an Academy Award, you have to have a release in movie theaters. So that is more a marketing tool to go into the theater, not to make money as much as make it eligible for an Academy Award
Right.
nomination or award, where the money will come after, from, if they achieve that, from the notoriety and publicity of doing so. But the actual loss leader, I would say that uh, more 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 films are being looked at whether or not they can make sufficient return, not total return, but sufficient return in theatrical release these days, versus going in saying, "Oh, we know we're going to lose money." I think it's not make all the money, but I think there's certain, goals that are getting harder to achieve for certain kind of movies.
Has the, and I mean, again, this almost feels like a loaded question because it feels like for a while we had a period where when you made a movie, it had to be either under 20 million or it had to be over 200 million in budget in order to sort of get it greenlit. There wasn't a lot of space for that sort of 60, 70, 80 million dollar movie in between. From your perspective, why has that kind of thinned out?
I think it's the whole, thing of so many cases. The middle is a difficult place to be.
Yeah,
You know, in anything, when you're sort of in the middle. I mean, it goes back to one of your earlier observations about good enough. So, you go back to Kevin's first book, Audienceology, and he talks about the research screening products process and the use of norms. And, you know, a certain score, a norm is a C grade, essentially. It's essentially
yeah.
saying, yeah, it's average, it's C. C isn't good enough to succeed. And we've actually found in the work we do in that area that you've got to be A or in the top 10% of A's to really think that you really have something that can drive audience interest and word of mouth. So it's a high bar. It's a high bar to get, because of all the people have never had more content
That's
available
true.
to them.
Yeah.
I mean, what is, how many articles have been written about this notion that we are in the attention economy? Getting people's attention is what things are about today, because there's just so much available to them.
Well, and I mean, I love that you brought that up because it goes back. I mean, when I first got the book, I mean, I think the thing that I gravitated to most was your epilogue. Because, I mean, having been in the business myself long enough, I've always had a bit of a standpoint of like, well, for the most part, every movie should make money. But like you said, given the glut of content, given uh the I guess mind-numbing sort of amount of things that are out there for people to watch, the bar doesn't move anymore. Even if you've got like a $5 million movie that you didn't spend a lot on, it's still gonna have a hard time to sort of cross that line of being profitable just because of the options that are out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's again, it goes back to understanding the audience. If in the book, there's a reference to a made up movie saying, let's say you wanted to make a movie about dirt, and you go, well, who's going to be interested in a movie about dirt? And you find out, well, there's a couple websites that talk about dirt, and and maybe after all your investigation about people who are interested in soil and dirt and all of that, that you think, maybe you could sell the movie for maybe $6,000.
Right.
So it tells you, if you just want to break even, you don't want to make any money, you can't make that movie for more than $6,000, and that's a frustration. And you go, and then you go, well, I guess I'm not going to make the movie. Or you go, well, I think they're wrong. I'm going to make that movie. It's that kind of. I mean, we have faced any number of stories where a movie that was made for too much uh, against what the audience for the movie was, and you go and you talk about it, and they go, "Well, I couldn't have made the movie for less money," and they go, well, "Maybe you shouldn't have made the movie."
No, it's true. No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, it probably goes back, at least for me, just sort of that old debate of just because you can doesn't mean that you should. And I mean, I imagine there's a lot of documentary filmmakers who probably suffer with that debate on a day-to-day basis. And it's one of those things where I'm curious on your perspective, like for audiences, is it the IP that matters or is it the idea that matters?
Wow. Well, I don't know how to separate the IP from the idea. So IP is part of the idea in certain cases.
That's fair. That's fair.
So I think it's the idea that matters. Uh, but the IP, I mean, I worked at Disney for
Right.
during those early Renaissance days, and I wasn't in the movie business before any of that stuff. And what I learned is, as the head of marketing at Disney, I had an easier life than other people, because if I put a Disney, logo on the front of a piece of marketing material of family entertainment, I got a lot more attention than when someone put, for instance, a Universal logo on
Yeah.
front. So IP, has importance until it wears itself out. I'm not saying I know the answer to this or not, but is Marvel at this point in time a worn out IP? I don't know. Feels a little like it.
It's possible, but I mean, you're right though. I mean, there is something to say about branding because I mean, even for me as a fan growing up, if I saw the emblem logo with the little ET flying through the sky on the side, I got excited.
Right, absolutely. And remember, before hell hit the fan with Miramax, there was
Yeah,
a time where if you were an adult film goer and you saw Miramax on front of a movie, it had a different attention. I think today maybe A24
I
looks
would
like,
agree with that. Absolutely.
yeah.
It's one of those things where, I mean, I'm always looking for, I mean, I guess people are always looking for an answer. And I mean, I think the reality, at least from my perspective, when it comes to the film business, is that this is a beast that is constantly changing by the day. And I mean, I'm curious for someone from your perspective who's been in it, how has the business has obviously evolved, but I mean, has it been evolved for the better, for the worse? Because like we've said before, the amount of content that's out there, it's hard for audiences to sort of keep up. I mean, I still have faith that the cream does eventually rise to the top, but it takes a lot of effort from not just the audiences, but from the critics and the publicists and the industry people
Uh,
to sort of get the cream up there.
I think, oh man, there's been so much change. I think that if you're putting a movie into a movie theater today, uh, I had it a lot easier in the past. When network television was a centerpiece of people's habits,
Yeah.
I could, I could buy heavy network television advertising schedule to drive attention to a movie. That doesn't exist anymore. So it's really tougher, as I say, to get attention of the audience to something, to a piece of content. But I think it's even tougher to say to an audience of today, go to a movie theater and sit in there for 2 hours to watch a piece of content. Don't pay attention to your phone. Don't pay attention to anything else. Sit there for 2 hours to pay attention to a single piece of content. That's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to pay for that. And I think to make them say, yeah, I really want to do that based on what I think that the rewards to me as an audience is going to be is a hard job.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. And I mean, it even, I guess to me looks, I mean, is that why the Hollywood model has, I mean, I don't want to say it's wrong or it's been broken, but I look at sort of the success of some of these bigger films that are 3.5 hours long that come out of India that have people just packing them in from day to day basis, or even now at my multiplex, I'll see a movie from India, I'll see a movie from Korea or China. There is more diversity sort of in the multiplex. I've got to imagine if only to keep the idea of the multiplex alive.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you're an exhibitor and you've got 12 screens or more in some cases, how many times a day, are you running a movie with one person in the audience? So you're looking for an array of something to just see what will work here. What might interest people here.
Yeah, no, it's a weird business to be in for sure. And I mean, with this book, I'm kind of curious because obviously you've been around the block, you've seen a lot. People always bemoan the death of cinema or the film industry, and I mean, in my mind, that's a bit of bullshit. But it is changing, and I mean, how do you think it's changing? Is it changing for the better? Is it changing for the worse?
I think. Oh wow. I think.
If I'm getting too deep, please tell
I
me.
I think the business aspects of it are getting harder and harder. How do you make money doing it? I think it's getting harder and harder. I think for audiences, I think they're being exposed to more content than they've ever been exposed to. Some of it they're enjoying, some of it they're not. At the same time, we know that the challenge of people getting off of short form video. I'm talking about video of less than 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Attention spans are difficult. So I think there's a certain challenge to the studios in the business sense. There's a challenge to filmmakers on why why do I expect that what I'm making here is going to hold people's attention and have them happy that they spent this time with me.
But conversely, wouldn't it be more advantageous on the studio side to say, hey, listen, take a little more time with it, fix what's going to be wrong with it, let's develop this and do this properly, rather than what seems to be now, hurry up and get it done because we got to get the next thing out.
Yeah, I think there's always been that, that money management part of it. We've got money invested. We got to get a return on our money.
Yeah.
But you also have the dynamic that goes the other way, where the filmmaker says, "I'm happy with this," and the studio might go, "Yeah, but I think there's work that could be done that could increase the definite recommends on this movie. I think we're almost there." They go, "No, I'm done. I'm happy," and there's that dynamic that goes on.
Will the debate or the balance between, or the struggle, I guess would be the best way to put it, between art and commerce ever have a middle ground, or is there always going to be that back and forth?
Man, I think it goes back forever. I mean, you can go back in art and music back to the 16th and 17th century where, there were patrons of the art, you know, and so I think you always go back between art. I think one of the things we work very hard in the book to do is separate out the fact that we're not talking about or challenging the artistic nature of film. This book is about the business of film, about show business. This isn't a challenge to art, the artistry of filmmaking.
Yeah, it's not show friends, it's show business. No, you're
Right,
absolutely right.
right.
And I mean, again, that's I think what draws me into a book like this, because having been doing this for 15, 20 years, I can comment on the artistic side of it all, but I only have a mild insight to sort of the business side of it. I mean, I know a little bit about a little bit, but I'm smart enough to know I don't know everything.
Right,
And I mean, I think this has opened my eyes a little bit more just to sort of the minutia of how stuff does actually get greenlit.
right. Yeah, I think some of the best stories in the book are the stories of the producers, how they think about what they want to get involved in and how they can get something made, and the executives saying, what am I gonna sponsor, what am I gonna put my own career on the line to try to get made. I think there's some really good stories there about personal stories about their to movies. I think absolutely.
No, and you're right. I mean, the directors, the producers, the studio heads who have had longevity in the business have found sort of that sweet spot between paying the rent and sort of satisfying themselves artistically. And I mean, at
Right.
the end of the day, that feels like it's the eternal struggle for everyone who sort of gets into this business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But I mean, Bob, I mean, thank you so much for the time. We went a little
Oh, my
over than what I was
pleasure.
hoping, but I appreciate the time on this. And again, congrats on a fascinating book, man. I honestly think anyone who's sort of invested in film and invested in the business will really get a kick out of this and diving in further into sort of the nuts and bolts of it all.
Well, thank you for that. Really appreciate that. We had fun writing it, and look forward to people enjoying the read.
Well, thanks again for the time, Bob. I
Okay.
appreciate it. And have a great rest of your day.
Okay, you too.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.